Our overall question for the topic action is, what is the mark that distinguishes actions from things which merely happen to you? In order to answer that question, we're first going to consider what I'm going to call the standard story, sometimes called the causal theory. The idea there is that we can say what distinguishes actions by talking about the causes of action, chief among them belief and desire. Let me explain. Here's a story, not a true story this time. Ahmed's next action will either be to pull the lever or to press the button, and he cannot do both of these things. If Ahmed pulls the lever, a forest rat will fall on his head. If he pushes the button, he's going to get $10. My question to you is, will Ahmed pull the lever? Will he pull that lever? Now you're right to say, Steve, that's a silly question. You can't answer that question yet. Here's a better question. What more do you need to know? What's the minimum, in fact, that you need to know in order to know what Ahmed will do? 90 seconds with your lecture buddy. What's the minimum you need to know in this scenario in order to know what Ahmed will do? Go. So what is the minimum that you need to know in order to know what Ahmed will do? Well, here's what you know so far. If Ahmed desires forest rat most, then you might think that's what he's going to do. He's going to pull the lever. On the other hand, if he desires $10 most, then he won't pull the lever. He'll go for the $10. He'll press the button, I suppose. But even that isn't quite enough, and knowing what Ahmed desires isn't quite enough. And by the way, you should notice that in Sulawesi and some other places, forest rat is actually considered a delicacy. People go hunting for forest rat on sort of special occasions or prior to special occasions in order to serve it at special occasions. So it's perfectly plausible that Ahmed desires forest rat most, for all we know. But you see, even that prediction, we don't have quite enough here, because that prediction would only be right if we also know that Ahmed believes truly that pulling the lever will get him the forest rat. It could be that Ahmed believes what I'll call reversely. That's to say, Ahmed actually is mistaken and he thinks that pulling the lever will get him $10 and pressing the button will get him the opposite. And in that case, of course, we'd make the opposite prediction. So if Ahmed has a mistaken or a reverse belief, which is a mistaken belief, about what the lever and the button do, then we will predict that if he desires forest rat most, he won't pull the lever, because he believes that pressing the button is what's going to get him the forest rat, which is what he desires most. So what you can see here is that our predictions of Ahmed's actions, minimally, should depend on information about what his preferences are and information about what he believes. Telling you how things actually are and knowing your own preferences, perhaps you prefer $10, won't help you at all to predict what Ahmed will do. It all depends on what he desires and he believes. Very simple, makes perfect sense. Good. I'm introducing this because I think you already have a very good understanding of what belief and desire are, although you don't necessarily use that terminology. If you think about the pattern of prediction here, what I hope is that this will be very familiar to you on reflection. And its familiarity shows you that you're perfectly capable in thinking in these terms, even if you don't always formulate it in this abstract way, belief and desire. Very good. Okay, so very simple thought. Action is a function of belief and desire. Action is a function of belief and desire. Now there's a second way to present this idea by appeal to decision theory. If you've got no idea what decision theory is, you can switch off now. You don't need this. But if you do have an idea what decision theory is, you'll be familiar with the idea that decision theory takes some possible actions. I've changed this to opening the red door and opening the blue door now. And each of those actions can have one or another outcome. And of course, we're not certain in advance what the outcome will be. And an agent will have a preference for the different outcomes. So here I'm imagining that the agent has a strong preference for 10 million compared to £100. Of course, I'm recording this in the days when the pound is still worth something. That could change by the time you're watching this. Funny, not really. Too close to the bone, Steve. Sorry, apologies. Here we go. But the money has a kind of diminishing utility for this agent, I suppose. The other thing we can do, of course, is we can represent the agent's subjective expectations. So the agent expects that when he or she opens the red door, the probability of getting that 10 million is extremely small, and the very large likelihood is that she'll get nothing. So this is actually what's behind the red door is a lottery ticket, in fact. When she opens the blue door, there's a 50-50 chance of getting either £100 or £200. So what decision theorists tell us is that we calculate expected utilities by combining the subjective expectations and the preferences. We combine subjective expectations and preferences in order to work out what has the highest expected utility, and we then suppose that the agent will perform the action with the highest expected utility. And this is really another way of formulating that idea about belief and desire. Another way of formulating that idea about belief and desire, the idea once again is that action is a function of two things, subjective expectations and preferences. Those are, in our terms, beliefs and desires. Nothing really interesting for our purposes about the distinction between two ways of looking at it. So what's my message? Very simple. Action is a function of belief and desire, and that's it.